You know that feeling? It's early morning, maybe mid-January, and you have to run out to the garage to grab something from the deep freezer.
Oh, yeah. Wearing just your socks.
Exactly. You step through the door from your hallway, and instantly it just hits you. It feels like you've stepped out onto the tundra.
Or the exact opposite, right? Like in the dead of summer.
Right. You open that same door, and you just get hit in the face by this wall of stagnant, like 90-degree heat. Smells faintly of old motor oil and lawn clippings.
It's brutal.
It is. And if you're like most people, you probably treat your garage like a giant junk drawer with a garage door. It's just that place where tools and holiday decorations and half-empty paint cans just sort of go to vanish.
Well, it's a massive volume of space, really. And we just completely surrender it to the elements.
Yeah.
And when you look at the physics of it and the sheer amount of energy wasted in the average home because of it, the garage is actually one of the most critical battlegrounds in building science.
Which is exactly why we are taking a deep dive into it today.
Yeah.
So our mission here is to extract the ultimate blueprint for turning that space from a drafty, energy-leaking liability into, a controlled, efficient part of your home.
Right? And doing it without wasting money on just unnecessary overkill.
Exactly. So I've brought a fairly massive stack of research to the table today. We've got official building code interpretations, technical presentations from housing research centers, contractor guides, and even some wild DIY experiments.
I love those because it's a space that really demands that mix of high-level building science and, boots on the ground practical application.
Yeah, for sure.
Because if you don't understand how the materials actually function under stress, then you can spend thousands of dollars and actually end up making the space worse.
Okay, so I want to start with the fundamental problem here. Before we can pick out materials or start tearing down walls, we really have to understand the physical reality of the space. Because heat seems to have a mind of its own. It absolutely hates being contained.
It is incredibly relentless. To borrow a concept from the Pennsylvania Housing Research Center data we're looking at, heat always flows from a state of high pressure or high concentration to low concentration.
Meaning hot always moves to cold.
Right. Think of it like a crowded subway car. When the doors open, everyone naturally pushes out toward the empty platform.
That makes total sense.
Yeah, so in the winter, your home's expensive, heated air is constantly trying to push its way out into that freezing garage. And in the summer, the dynamic flips. That sweltering garage is radiating heat directly through the shared wall into your air-conditioned living room.
So we are essentially fighting a multi-front war here. Because heat doesn't just travel one way, does it?
No, not at all. There are three main mechanisms you have to defend against. First is conduction.
Which is direct contact.
Exactly. That's heat moving through direct physical contact. So if you have a freezing cold wooden framing stud touching the back of your interior drywall, the heat conducts right through.
Okay, got it.
Second is convection. This is the transfer of heat through the air. Those cold drafts sneaking through the electrical outlets or under the door.
Oh, I hate those.
Right. And third is radiation. That's heat traveling through electromagnetic waves, like the midday sun baking the dark metal of your garage door until it's just hot to the touch.
Okay, so to fight all three of those, we rely on insulation. And this is where I think we need to define our terms before we get too deep in the weeds.
Sure.
I see the term R-value plastered all over these contractor blogs and building codes. If I go to the hardware store, I see R11, R15, R30. What is that R actually doing for me?
The R simply stands for resistance, specifically thermal resistance. It's a measurement of how well a specific material resists that conductive flow of heat we just talked about.
Oh, okay.
So the higher the R value number, the harder it is for heat to push through it.
Okay, so higher is obviously better. Which actually brings me to this official building code interpretation I found from the Alberta government. It's called a stand data.
Right, the stand data.
Yeah.
That's a crucial one.
Yeah, and if you live in a place with brutal winters like Alberta, you would logically assume that an attached garage needs to be wrapped up tight, right? Like with the exact same high R values as the rest of your house.
You would assume that. And surprisingly, local building authorities assume that all the time.
Wait, really? The officials get it wrong?
Oh, frequently. They often misinterpret the rules and demand that homeowners match the energy efficiency of the main house when they're building an attached garage.
Wow.
But the Alberta government had to step in and issue this official stand data to clarify that this is totally incorrect. Legally, an attached garage is treated as unconditioned space.
Unconditioned? which means you have absolutely no legal obligation to maintain any specific temperature for human comfort out there.
None at all. The insulation required between the garage and the exterior isn't there to keep you warm while you do woodwork. It's there to maintain environmental separation.
Okay, so just keeping the weather out.
Exactly. It's primarily to protect the building elements of the garage itself from severe
Yeah.
damage, moisture and deterioration. The legal minimums they outline are shockingly basic, actually.
Like what?
Well, for exterior frame 2x4 walls, you only legally need an R12 nominal insulation value.
R12. That's it. So we aren't trying to invite the garage to sit at the dining room table. We're just trying to stop it from actively attacking the house.
That is the perfect mental model. You're just building a defensive perimeter.
Okay, but here is where that mental model completely breaks down for a lot of people. What happens when you decide to build a living space directly inside or, on top of that defensive perimeter?
Oh boy.
Yeah. For anyone listening who has a bonus room built directly over an attached garage, you know the visceral pain I am talking about?
Oh, the notorious bonus room. It is literally the bane of residential architecture.
It really is. You try to set up a home office up there. In July, you are sweating through your shirt while on a video call.
And in December, your toes are completely numb,
Yeah.
even with the thermostat cranked all the way up.
Yes. Why is that specific room so universally terrible at maintaining its temperature?
Well, the Pennsylvania Housing Research Center breaks this down beautifully. It comes down to something called the bonus room truss.
Okay, what is that?
When an architect designs a room, built into the roof trusses over a garage, they create a really unique nightmare for air sealing. Think about the floor of that bonus room.
Right.
It's completely exposed to the unconditioned freezing or boiling garage air directly below it.
So the cold air is just sitting right beneath your office chair.
Exactly. And the 2018 International Residential Code actually had to step in and mandate a specific fix for this.
Oh, really? What's the fix?
They explicitly mandated that whatever insulation you put in that floor cavity must maintain permanent contact with the underside of the subfloor decking. This is crucial.
Wait, permanent contact?
Yeah, if there is even a half-inch gap between the top of the insulation and the bottom of your floorboards, you completely lose the battle.
Oh, because of convection.
Yes, the cold air from the garage infiltrates that tiny air gap, loops around, and completely bypasses your insulation. It essentially creates a refrigerated wind tunnel right under your feet.
Okay, so if I am a DIR, I'm hearing this and I'm thinking, well, I have the ultimate foolproof solution.
Let me guess.
If the problem is an air gap causing convection, then I am just going to go to the hardware store, buy the absolute thickest, highest R-value, pink, fluffy insulation I can find, and I am going to aggressively jam it into that floor cavity.
Oh, no.
I mean, I will use a broom handle if I have to. I will pack it so tight to the subfloor that an air gap is physically impossible.
I see the logic, but please do not do that.
Yeah.
That is quite literally the worst thing you could do to your insulation.
Really?
Yeah. The North American Insulation Manufacturers Association, IAMA-CHI, has extensive data on this specific mistake. If you compress fiberglass or cellulose insulation to squeeze it into a tight space, you utterly destroy its R value.
But why? If I pack it denser, shouldn't it be a stronger barrier, like a thicker wall?
You have to understand how fibrous insulation actually works at a microscopic level. The pink fiberglass, or the recycled paper cellulose itself, isn't what stops the heat.
It's not.
No. The material's only job is to create a structure that traps millions of microscopic pockets of air. That trapped dead air is the actual thermal resistance.
So the air itself is the insulation.
Precisely. If you crush those batts to stuff them into a cavity, you squeeze all those microscopic air pockets right out. You're just left with a dense, solid block of material.
Oh, wow.
And solid materials conduct heat rather than resisting it. You basically tune your insulation into a thermal bridge.
That is a massive perspective shift. So you aren't installing fiberglass, you are installing trapped air. And if you crush the air out, you lose the protection entirely.
Exactly.
Okay, so we know we need proper R values and we need perfect, gentle contact without any compression. Let's look at the actual materials we have at our disposal. I'm looking at the deep dives from the Nealon Insulation and Poulin Building Materials contractor blogs.
Yeah, let's start with the most ubiquitous. Fiberglass batts. They're cheap, they're widely available, and you can just cut them with a utility knife.
Super easy for a weekend project.
Right. For a standard 2x4 wall, they will get you that R11 to R15 value you need.
But the downside is they are terrible at stopping airflow on their own. Like the wind just blows right through them. And if you have a roof leak and they get wet, They clump up, lose their trapped air, and basically become a wet blanket inside your wall.
Exactly. Then you have blown-in cellulose. This is fantastic if your garage already has drywall up and you don't want to demolish the whole room.
Right, you just drill a hole and blow it in.
Yeah, just throw it right into the cavities. It's eco-friendly, mostly recycled newspaper treated with fire retardant.
But gravity always wins.
Gravity always wins. Over a few years, cellulose can settle, leaving these empty, uninsulated gaps at the very top of your wall cavities where heat can just pour out.
That sounds incredibly frustrating.
It is. Which brings us to what the Neon blog calls the undisputed heavyweight champ, spray foam, specifically closed cell spray foam.
Okay, so this stuff provides an incredibly high R6.5 per inch. Plus, it acts as a vapor retarder and completely seals air leaks in one single step. But actually, I want to pause here for a second.
Sure.
We throw around the terms vapor retarder and vapor barrier a lot in DIY spaces. Are they the exact same thing?
They are related but distinct, and it's a really great question. A vapor barrier completely stops moisture from passing through. Think of like a thick plastic sheet.
Okay.
A vapor retarder slows down the movement of moisture significantly, but might allow a tiny amount of permeability to let a wall, dry out if water gets trapped inside.
Ah, I see.
Closed cell spray foam is so dense it acts as a highly effective vapor retarder, sometimes bordering on a barrier depending on the thickness.
But it is super expensive, and it requires professional installation. Plus, if you ever need to run a new electrical wire through that wall, you are basically chipping away at hardened foam.
Right. Which is why, for many detached or unheated storage garages, full spray foam is generally massive overkill.
Okay, that brings us to what might be the most fascinating material in the entire stack. Mineral wool, commonly known by the brand name rock wool.
Mineral wool is an incredible feat of engineering. It's made from rock and steel slag, spun into fibers, usually incorporating about 70% recycled material.
Wow.
And it is significantly denser than fiberglass, so when you stand it up in a wall cavity, it holds its shape. It doesn't flop over or compress under its own weight.
And it is completely hydrophobic, right? Like water just beads right off it.
Absolutely.
But the real showstopper is the fire resistance. I have to bring up this YouTube video we found from a channel literally called Detached Garage.
Oh, I know the one.
Yeah. They wanted to prove how fire-resistant this stuff is, so they built a miniature house out of rock wool panels, and then they filled the inside of this tiny house with chocolate bars.
A very unconventional but, effective scientific method.
Oh, it gets better. They put this miniature rock wool house on top of a steel fire pit cage filled with kindling, and they literally set a raging bonfire underneath it.
Just blasting it.
Yes. They had the local fire department standing by. They just let the flames roast the bottom of this little house for an extended period. Finally, they extinguish the fire, pop the lid off the house, and pull the chocolates out.
Yeah.
They were perfectly intact, not even soft.
That vividly illustrates why building codes often require mineral wool as a legitimate fire stop in construction. I mean, it simply will not catch fire, and it stops heat transfer so well that it buys you and the fire department crucial time if the worst happens.
That's amazing. And the host of that channel also demonstrated a really clever installation trick called the flash and batt method.
Yes, this is a brilliant hybrid approach for anyone trying to balance high performance with a realistic budget.
How does it work?
You hire a pro to spray a very thin, like 1-inch layer of closed cell spray foam against the exterior wall sheathing, that is the flash. That 1 inch seals all the tiny air leaks, stops drafts, and provides your moisture control. Then, instead of paying for 3 more inches of expensive foam, you fill the rest of the wall cavity with a much cheaper batting material, like mineral wool.
Oh, so you get the airtight seal of a luxury foam job, but the bulk of the thermal resistance comes from the budget-friendly batts.
Exactly. It's about allocating your budget where it actually matters.
Speaking of allocating budget, let's look at the elephant in the room, or rather, the giant moving wall in the room.
The garage door.
Right. I can spend thousands of dollars perfectly flash and batting my walls with fireproof rock wool, but if I ignore the garage door, I've basically accomplished nothing.
The surface area of a standard 2-car garage door is massive. It is a gaping thermal hole in your defensive perimeter.
Yeah, having an insulated garage with a thin, uninsulated aluminum door is like wearing a premium Sub-Zero down jacket, but leaving the zipper completely open to the wind.
That's exactly what it's like.
Oh.
If you're serious about this, you need to upgrade to an insulated door with a solid polyurethane foam core.
Polyurethane, okay.
Yeah, a high-quality insulated door can achieve an R18 to R24 rating, which is robust enough to handle a polar vortex.
But fixing the thermal hole introduces a brand new enemy. You seal up the door, the garage gets warmer, and suddenly you have a massive moisture problem.
Yes. The Garrick's garage door source calls it Mother Nature's way of trolling us. You insulate the door, and suddenly the door starts sweating.
Walk me through the physics of this condensation. Like, why does it happen?
Think about your daily winter routine. You drive through a snowstorm and pull your car into the newly insulated garage. The car is covered in snow, ice, road slush.
Right.
Because your garage is now warmer, that snow starts melting. As it melts, the water evaporates into the air, drastically raising the humidity inside the space.
So you basically have a slow cooker of humidity just sitting there.
Yes. Now that warm, highly humid air floats up, and what does it hit? The large metal panels of your garage door. Even insulated doors have cold metal components facing the interior, especially around the seams and hinges. When that warm, moist air touches a cold surface, the water vapor rapidly cools and turns back into liquid. The door literally starts to sweat.
And garage door sweat drips down to the floor. It creates a breeding ground for mold in the corners. It rusts out your door cracks. And eventually, it just ruins the door itself.
It really does. To combat this, you need high-quality weather stripping around the perimeter of the door. You also need to ensure you have a proper vapor barrier, like a continuous 6 mil plastic sheet installed on the warm side of your wall insulation before you finish the walls.
Just to stop that moisture from migrating into your fresh rock wool.
Precisely.
But the Garrick source actually offered a surprisingly simple mechanical hack to fight this condensation. And it doesn't even involve any fancy dehumidifiers.
Oh, the fan trick. I love this one.
It's brilliant. It's a 5-step DIY solution. They show you how to mount a standard oscillating household fan directly to your overhead garage door track. You secure a bracket to the horizontal track above your head, mount a fan rod, and adjust it so the fan points directly at the third door panel from the ground. Then you just let it run.
The physics behind it are wonderfully elegant. Condensation requires stagnant, humid air to sit against the surface with a significant temperature differential.
Okay.
By keeping a fan constantly blowing room temperature air across the cold surface of the door, you do two things. First, you equalize the temperature slightly. But more importantly, you create continuous air circulation. The moisture simply cannot settle and stick to the metal if the air is constantly moving.
You are basically blow drying the door before it even has a chance to sweat.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's take inventory here. Our walls are perfectly flashed and batted with trapped air, not crushed air.
Checked.
Our polyurethane door is stopping the polar vortex, and we have a fan circulating the air to prevent the sweat. The final step is running to the hardware store, buying a stack of drywall, and finishing the room.
Okay, I'm going to stop you right there.
Wait, really?
Putting up standard drywall in a garage is often a terrible idea.
Why? I mean, every house I've ever been in has a drywalled garage.
Sure, but it's because of the unique hostile environment of a garage. The truss core panel source breaks this down perfectly. Let's look at what drywall actually is.
Okay.
It is essentially crushed gypsum rock wrapped in heavy organic paper.
Organic paper.
Exactly. In a garage where you have melting snow, high humidity from the car, and, limited ventilation, that drywall acts like a giant sponge. And because the paper facing is organic material, once it gets damp, it becomes a literal food source for mold.
Oh, wow. So you were installing a mold farm on your walls.
You really are. Not to mention drywall is incredibly fragile. You put a ladder off the wall too quickly, or you swing your car door open too wide and suddenly you have a dent or a crumbling hole that you have to patch.
That's a good point. They mention OSB plywood as well in the sources, but that isn't a great alternative either, is it?
Not really. OSB is engineered wood. When it absorbs that garage moisture, the edges swell, it delaminates, and it just looks terrible. The modern alternative that building science is pivoting toward is PVC wall panels.
PVC? Like the plumbing pipes?
Similar material, yes. These are rigid, extruded panels. They are 100% waterproof. They physically cannot support mold growth because there's zero organic material in them.
Oh, that makes sense.
And they are highly impact resistant. They install incredibly fast with a tongue and groove design that hides the screws. And when they get covered in dirt or car exhaust, you just wipe them down with a wet rag.
That sounds ideal. But there is a massive code caveat here that we cannot ignore, especially for anyone who went the spray foam route we discussed earlier.
Yes, this is a vital life safety issue. Building codes almost universally mandate that if you use any type of foam insulation, whether it is closed-cell spray foam or rigid foam boards, you must cover it with an approved thermal barrier.
And what's an approved barrier?
Now, this is almost always defined as half-inch drywall.
Because foam is highly combustible, right?
Yes. In a fire, exposed foam burns violently and produces incredibly toxic black smoke. The code requires that half-inch drywall because it acts as a 15-minute fire barrier, giving you time to escape the house before the fire reaches the foam.
Okay, but wait. If the building code forces me to put up drywall anyway as a fire barrier to protect the spray foam, why would I then spend extra money to install PVC panels right over the top of it? That feels like I am paying for the walls twice.
You are paying an added upfront cost, absolutely. But you have to look at the long-term life cycle of the space.
Okay.
If you leave that mandated drywall exposed, what happens? It absorbs moisture, it grows mold, it gets smashed by your kid's bicycle handle, and you spend your weekends taping, mudding, sanding, and repainting it.
Which is miserable.
Right. But by snapping the waterproof PVC panels directly over the mandatory drywall fire barrier, you are permanently sealing it away. You're essentially armor plating the fragile drywall.
So the drywall protects the house from the foam, and the PVC protects the drywall from the garage. It is an investment in never having to patch or paint your garage again. I love that. So let's look back at the journey we've taken here today. We started by respecting the actual physics of heat flow, treating it like a subway crowd trying to escape.
Yep.
We learned how to beat the bonus room trap by ensuring permanent contact and avoiding the fatal mistake of squeezing the trapped air out of our batts. We walked through the materials, from standard fiberglass to the fireproof, chocolate-saving magic of mineral wool.
A true scientific breakthrough.
Right. We tackled the giant thermal hole that is the garage door, solved the condensation troll with a household fan, and finally, we ditched the exposed mold-farming drywall for armor-plated PVC.
It really is a comprehensive blueprint for fundamentally transforming the space. But actually, if I can leave the listener with one final thought, I want to pivot away from thermal energy and heat loss entirely.
Oh.
I want to talk about sound. Yes. Throughout this entire process, we have been completely obsessed with temperature control and air sealing. But consider what we just built. By meticulously sealing every single air gap with flash and batt foam, by installing incredibly dense, fibrous materials like mineral wool in the walls, and by adding heavy weather stripping to a thick foam core door.
Wait, you inadvertently created something else.
You created a nearly perfect, sound-isolated acoustic chamber.
Oh, wow.
Mineral wool is actually prized in recording studios for its acoustic dampening properties.
I didn't even think about the acoustic side effect. That's incredible.
It completely changes the paradigm of the room. Think about the lifestyle possibilities. When you are no longer constrained by freezing winters or sweltering summers, and you no longer have to worry about the noise of a table saw, a drum set, or a massive home theater subwoofer disturbing your neighbors or waking up your kids inside the house, what could you do with that space?
Wow. It stops being a place where you just store an old lawnmower and a bucket of holiday lights. It becomes the ultimate blank slate flex space. And suddenly, that cold, dark junk drawer with the garage door we talked about at the beginning, it doesn't look like a junk drawer anymore. It looks like the most valuable, untapped square footage you own.
That's the power of building science.
It really is. You have all the science, the material hacks, and the code knowledge to make it happen. Go step out into your garage in your socks, look at it with fresh eyes, and start planning. We will catch you on the next deep dive.